everyone. Welcome to the March episode of the Nightmares to Miracles podcast. I'm back again with Dr. Dave Asomaning, and we're here for another great episode for you guys on the topic of miracle mindsets. So every month we get together. We've been doing this for over 4 years now. I don't know if we're in the 5th year. It's crazy no matter what it is. But yeah, we've just been gathering every single month and gathering people like you who are listening and watching who are interested in leveling up your mindsets, not just to positive mindset or that kind of thing, but a miracle mindset where you're like, I'm tired of living in a life that's bound by the traditional rules of society or what's traditionally considered possible, but we want to enter miracles. And Dave has an amazing definition of miracles. I'm not sure if he invented it or if he got it from someone, but a miracle is not like a genie in a bottle, make a wish. It's just a solution to a problem that seems impossible to solve. So Dave is an expert in miracle mindset. That's what his whole business is created on, which is called SynchroMind. And so Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you help people achieve this?
Thank you, Brittany. It's great to be here again with you for our March 2025 podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And what a flex, what a wonderful flex to say that we've been doing this. We're in our 5th year now, although we have known each other, I think it's more like 8 years, something like that, right? And I'll get to how we met and how you've been helping me in just a moment. But to start, you did amazingly with that definition of miracles, right? I really am partial to that definition, and not to kind of overinflate my own sort of kudos for myself about that. But yeah, I came up with that over time because the thing that really interests me about miracles the most after having studied them for a long time is not the mystery of them or the wonder of them. All that stuff is important. But especially from A Course in Miracles, for me, it's really about solving something that just seems like it can't be solved, right? Whether it's in my coaching, it's health, wealth, love, and enlightenment for high-powered CEOs, entrepreneurs, millionaires. Yet to start with billionaires, although I have that on my vision board, my wish list of things to do, in spite of the immense unpopularity, it seems like, of billionaires. I'm not there's a list of people I think are excellent billionaires, right? To me, they're fighting for the right things. They want to empower other people. So I'm not of the school that thinks that if you're a billionaire, then you're a liar and a cheat and a thief, and that's how you got there, right? And having worked with wealthy people for a while, gradually over time, I've identified that, they have the crises in their lives, whether it's relationship or marital, family issues, health issues, financial issues. Now, nobody's immune to the things the vagaries of life, as they say. But I think over time, the thing I like to include these days in our podcast is that I've moved more explicitly towards the wealth concerns of my clients. And so it's all the other coaching kinds of things around their enterprises, their vision, what they want to accomplish. But there are unique issues that wealth can present. And again, I never like to speak glibly or in a denigrating way about any of my clients. But as an example, I think that one of the things is that once you've attained a certain level of surpassing wealth, where most people don't live, it can make one feel sort of entitled to dictate how one wants things to happen in one's life with the people around one, without even actually being fully conscious that one is becoming a bit of a dictator. And it's my privilege and honor to be able to help clients gently and tactfully, but firmly and consistently see how they're doing this in their circles. And the relationships that work the best are the ones in which the leader will say, yeah, I love it. I love that we do this, because nobody can tell me this stuff. Nobody in my circle can tell me. I've got, they don't always say this in a brazen, bragging way, but the implication is I've got too much power, financial power over people's lives, and people are scared of me. So I'm not scared of people, but I do like to be gentle and delicate when I'm confronting, because I've tried the other way. I used to like getting to screaming matches with my clients. It doesn't work. They'll leave, So anyway, so I live in Florida and love Florida, except for the tornadoes in October 2024. um, just wildly bizarre and traumatic. And so yesterday we had tornadoes. The whole of the U.S. has been suffering from intense severe weather, and some of it dipped south again, and it rained all night and was very windy. And I'm like, okay, is today the day when we have a repeat? Well, let me pray for miracles and to avoid, because I mean, the way that first tornado blew through here is like you're comfortable, warm, cozy. The next thing, your whole house is gutted. The whole thing from top to bottom, everything blown out, everything tossed around, missiles flying. It was like, okay, let's not again. So there's a little bit of PTSD from that. I love Florida. It's a great place. It's beautiful, but I'm like, okay, there's some residual stuff there. The next set of preliminaries have to do with the themes we do every year. So every year, this podcast, the ACIM, Course in Miracles groups I run, um, and in some ways my own life are run by a theme. So whether it's forgiveness, one word, or love, or atonement, or other themes of that nature. This year, the one that we're doing is light. Right, we're in the theme of light, and we did this in 2015, but that was before I had met you and was doing the podcast, and I don't have a memory of anything we ever talked about. So this podcast serves an additional amazing function in that we have a record of what we've been talking about, what's important to us, and I can always review it to build uh, on revisiting some of these themes, right? In addition to the themes, I personally have been using lesson 47, God is the strength in which I trust, lesson 47 from A Course in Miracles, um, the workbook more specifically. I've been using that. It really gives me a lot of comfort. It helps me relax when I'm getting worked up or anxious or angry or fearful, whatever. And I found that if I'm honest, I'm using two others in a similar way, which I'm going to start including in our preliminary. So I'm using lesson 41. Um, God goes with me wherever I go, although I like my own sort of redo of that, which is I connect with God incessantly or without ceasing, right? The whole idea that in each of these lessons that I'm carrying is that we meditate to connect with the divine source. And in lesson 41, the benefit there is there's a speed of miraculous result that happens when we're able to connect with the divine source. And I just love that. And I use that a lot with clients, whether explicitly through the lesson or encouraging, meditating, and connecting. You can see results like right away, very often. That lesson promises that. And then, so there's lesson 41. 47 is really about not trusting in one's own strength, trusting in God's strength. And then 50, I love 52, which is at the heart of the miracle definition in some ways. There's a paraphrase in there. Uh, God is the um, God is the strength. Sorry, I'm mixing all this up. Through the love of God within me, I can resolve all seeming difficulties without effort and ensure confidence. And that's just loaded with things. All difficulties? Oh, okay. Without effort? Okay. And ensure confidence. I'm like, is this, I'm like, am I reading this right? So that's a very sweet thing to meditate on when everyone has a list of problems. So anyway, so those are some of the lessons. I'll try to be quick but effective in explaining why I'm carrying those with me as cornerstone lessons. So the only other thing for now, Brittany, which we do on every call, is to look a little bit at our journey together. So we started with worksheets. I've come across some of those worksheets, and at some point I'll do a show and tell when I'm better organized. But so I would, with an initial consultation or a complimentary initial call or getting into the coaching, I had my own Word document worksheets, and I'd send these to clients to help guide the conversation. And I was blithely unaware of how unattractive they were, and nobody complained. Nobody said, "Oh, these are like." But I came across your work online, and I reached out to you and I was like, is there anything that we can do about this? And man, you were like amazing. You transformed everything, beautified everything, made it more professional. And we just kept going with that. I mean, you helped me with a ton of things that needed revamping. And then from there, we went to video modules for my online course. Again, you did wonders with some very basic audios uh, that I had made of different modules. And sidebar, you were telling me earlier that AI might be really helpful with that kind of stuff too. So I'm looking forward to your educating us more about that, and our audience too, more about that as we go along. Um, that all helped me repurpose the modules for the course into the book. And I don't like to state that too glibly because that was quite a bit of work, maybe another year's worth of work, refining, sequencing, getting everything in shape for the book. Uh, but the book, I love the book. I'm grateful for the book. It's entitled Nightmares to Miracles. And it really is a crystallization of the most important ideas um, in my work as a recovering or former psychotherapist, couples, marriage and family group with an emphasis in spirituality, and then into the coaching space. So I really love the book as a kind of a travelogue of where I've been, but where I like to help clients go. And you were instrumental in some of the steps getting there. Is where I'm going with this. And then I checked in with you somewhat cautiously. I was like, I don't want to overload her, and she's like, she's thinking that I'm stalking her, and everything is always coming back to her, and maybe she doesn't want to do this next step. But I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to start a monthly podcast, and uh, are you open to helping me with it, actually being a conversation partner on it? And so here we are. It's like, and I always like to add before I hand you the mic to introduce more of your work to us, to the audience, tell people where they can find it. I always like to add that the work that you do is way beyond what we do on the call, where we're having the conversation. You help repurpose what we're doing, the raw footage here off the Zoom call, into a video podcast, into an audio podcast, and into a written blog. And you post all of those, and you keep track of them, and you add some vitality, which isn't just what we talked about. There's always some special sauce that you're adding, in case anybody's wondering about it. It's not just a mechanical process. And it's just amazing. It's amazing. So I encourage anybody who's listening. Brittany's the real deal with what she does. And like we've said, here we are overall in our relationship, 8 years later, 5 years into the podcast, and we've never met in person. We've never actually met in person. It's a miracle. And part of the reason I talk about this is because it's part of what I call the miracle resume. And maybe I'll say a word of that as we transition to the lesson itself. But over to you, Brittany, for anything you want to share and any other thoughts.
Yes, thanks, Dave, for the shout out. I always appreciate that. Recently, maybe I said this on the last call that I sent a client that testimonial from the last time with a timestamp of when you start talking about this to let her know
nice.
like what I'm kind of capable of, and she loved it. So she was like, "Tell me more about how you did all of this."
Please, anytime.
So yeah,
this
is great. I've got a lot of these testimonials from you, so I appreciate that. And if anyone is interested in what I do, I have a website which is brittanynew.com. It's linked in the show notes. And I also have a YouTube channel, which is my name, Brittany New. And lately I'm talking a lot about AI video. So I was talking to Dave about this and how some of the technology has just gotten really astounding. AI has been something we've all been contemplating and curious about for, I'd say, the last 2 years, maybe, or give or take. And it's finally getting to a point where you're like, wow, I almost don't have to do much of anything anymore. And depending on what you're trying to do, if you want to build an app or launch a website or start a blog, it really can do things so easily. So now I'm into video AI avatars and using them of myself or of my clients to create more content for them. So they're even coming out with a new feature where you can upload a picture of yourself and you can engage in a conversation podcast with an AI avatar. It creates the words and it just makes you having this conversation with someone who doesn't exist in the same room. So that's pretty wild.
That's amazing.
Maybe you'll replace me with AI.
Well,
no,
I was just thinking. I don't think so.
No, it's not for what we're doing. There's different styles, different purposes. I could see that being a very short form advertisement, for example, just a different style. So yeah, it's really interesting. If you want to learn about that, it's on my YouTube channel, and I'll throw it back to the Miracle Resume. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I'd also like to hear more about where people can find you, specific things about where people can find you. I know we put some of that in the show notes and we put that in the newsletter. I put that in the newsletter. The more places, the better. I love it. So the miracle resume, right? What you and I do in this preliminary part of our call each time, our show each time, is we're rehearsing a miracle, right? Because the level of productivity and value um, and just exponential enhancement of what I can not do is amazing, right? It's miraculous. It's solutions to problems that seem impossible to solve. And my miracle resume has about 10 chunky things on it as an adult. If I added when I was a kid, there's more things on it. But my first one is an Oprah miracle. My next one is my German miracle. My next one is my let's say a client that I got, most amazing client that took me into this additional realm of high net worth, world class people, and then I have a my heart miracle. Then I could go on and on. My tornado miracle, which was just from last year, right? And then I have so that's my miracle resume. Then I have my miracle wish list, which is the miracles that I'm looking for next, right? So this is all lingo I've come up with in the coaching process to help us stay in the miracle mindset world. So this is, it's just a miracle. It's like one of the miracles. It's on my 10 top miracles. It's on there. And I just think it's so easy and so appropriate to be able to share it with our audience. And people say, but every time, Dave, every time. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not just uh, giving information about you. I'm modeling the repetitive nature of a miracle process, right? And I could do that with all 10. They all have dramatic stories to them, amazing breakthroughs, benefits that happened. But it all helps us to stay comforted and encouraged when things look like they're in the nightmare part of wherever we are. And you can convert to a miracle. So over to you for anything else you want to say about where specifically where you want people to look for you. If I didn't miss, I hope I didn't miss that from what you shared before. But and anything else, and then we'll get to the lesson itself.
Okay, yeah, I did say my website. That's kind of a good place to start. If you go to my homepage, there's a place you can book a meeting with me there. So that would be like the best way to get in touch with me for the first time. Then we can chat face to face on a call. So that's what I have set up on my website, brittanynew.com.
Excellent, excellent, good. And I know that you have um, some YouTube, a lot of
Hmm.
YouTube kinds of things. I go there sometimes. I think that's one of the links I go to. I just love checking things out that you might have
Hmm.
done. I go to the master
Hmm.
YouTuber who helps me with my stuff. And this is the other
Thanks.
thing too about the videos, right? Every year you do different graphics for our series of what we're going to do. You think this out ahead. The images um, connect with what the theme is.
Hmm.
You do intros and outros. They're just
Hmm.
amazing. I mean,
Hmm.
I sometimes just go to my videos just to look at those things, you know, and admire them. And I found recently, last aside, and then we'll get going with the work for today, the additional work for today. I was with my sister, and we were watching some TV together, and I just stumbled into, oh, you know, she likes to watch YouTube a lot. I said, have you seen this my channel? And I was like, let me just show you the most recent video. And it was like intro, outro, Brittany, we're talking. And my sister was like, oh, interesting. That's really Brittany is something else. She's like, she keeps you on your toes, man. You know, she was just giving me this sort of play-by-play feedback. It was kind of fun, but bottom line of what I'm saying is that it's one thing to put it out through the newsletter and to all the socials. It's another thing to share it with a close family member and just keep quiet, you know, just listen to what they're saying and not try to edit. This happened because of this. Oh, that looks weird because of, or whatever. It's like just be quiet and let her watch it and say what she wants to. So, all right, we are now shifting to the lesson for today, which is lesson 73. And the headline for this lesson is I Will There Be Light. I Will There Be Light. And in vetting this with other people and in my groups and so on, it's like, I will there be light. What kind of grammatical formation is that? That's one of the first things. I was like, I don't get that. I will there be light. That's weird. So, but anyway, hopefully it'll become clear in a moment as we go through. So, at a kind of the top level of this lesson, there are several things that it's trying to integrate. There's the idea of God's will. Then there's the idea of the ego's will, which this lesson keeps referring to as the ego's idle wishes. Then there's our will, each of us individual human beings, the will that we have. And this lesson basically is making the point that our will, as opposed to the ego's will, the ego's idle wishes to be separate from God, our will is actually in sync with or even at one with God's will. And that what this lesson is really trying to encourage us to do is to be more conscious of merging our individual will with God's will, or accepting that they're in the alignment, and dropping the ego's idle wishes or weak will to be separate. Then it also makes the point that even though the ego's will is very weak and very illusory, once the ego ushers us into the realm of nightmares, the grip of the nightmares is very powerful and very convincing and very strong. So it's like a make-believe world, but if we cross over into it, it's brutal. It's unreal, it's illusory, but the consequences of being in that realm are like hell, right? So this whole lesson is about protect your will and keep it aligned with God. And then the final thing I'll say before we sample a couple of things here is that it's God's plan is where we want to be aligned with our will, to recognize that there's no better plan than God's plan for salvation, for miracles, for all of this, and that there are a couple of easy aspects of God's plan which involve giving up grievances, and then this is the sort of the punchline of the whole thing, and continuing to work with divine light as part of the path into God's domain and kingdom and will and realm. So this is why this is a lesson related to light, right? So, excuse me, those are just a few summary thoughts, themes. I'll go through and highlight a few other things here and there. But again, because this is on recorded, it can be played on a loop in order to get the different pieces that I'm talking about, right? So, one of the points it makes early on this lesson is that God's will and alignment with God's will brings life. The ego is not creative. It doesn't make life. It actually makes nothing. It just makes an illusion. And so again, metaphors abound here, right? One of the metaphors is, to me, is the idea of looking into a mirror, right? There's me, who's alive, and then there's the image I'm looking at in the mirror, and it's an illusion. There's no real life there. We use the image of watching a movie, right? It's very exciting, very interesting, a lot of action, but there's nothing there. It's made up, it's an illusion. Or the final one for now is the dream, the nightmare, right? Dreaming stuff. It's like, oh, I'm so glad I'm awake. That's like, oh, that was terrible. Somebody was beating my butt in the dream, and I was like, I was all over the place, and I'm so relieved. So, all right. So let's go to the exercises here. There's just one main thing about the exercises, and then we'll start to wind down with all of this discussion. I'll hand you the mic, see if you have any thoughts. Then we usually get to application. So we will begin, this is in paragraph 9, lesson 73, paragraph 9. We will begin our longer practice periods with the recognition that God's plan for salvation, and only God's plan, is wholly in accord with your will. It is not the purpose of an alien power thrust upon you unwillingly. It is the one purpose here on which you and your God are in perfect accord. You will succeed today, the time appointed for the release of the child of God from hell and from all idle wishes. God's will is now restored to your awareness. God is willing this very day to look upon the light in you and be saved. After reminding yourself of this and determining to keep your will clearly in mind, tell yourself with gentle firmness and quiet certainty, I will there be light. Let me behold the light that reflects God's will in mind. So this is where that sentence, even though it's grammatically awkward for most of us probably, begins to take on that meaning where it's like, no, I'm willing that there be light as my choice, and that I align with the light, and that's all part of God's plan to melt away grievances, to reduce the effect, the nightmarish effects of the ego's will on us. And then finally it says here for now, it says, then let your will assert itself, joined with the power of God and united with yourself, your higher self, in other words. Put the rest of the practice period under their guidance. Join with them as they lead the way. That's the power of God, your higher self, your true will. It's just amazing. It's like, I think that the purpose of this lesson, ultimately, before I hand you the mic, Brittany, is that it's intended to help us understand that it's a relatively easy process to just acknowledge surrendering one's will to God and letting God do the heavy lifting. Because when we think in terms of will, it's like, oh, it's so hard. I got so much heavy lifting to do. My will doesn't want to do it. I want to do a million other things that are not in line with God's will. So anything you want to reflect on, add to, and then we'll do the applications and call to action to finish for today.
Yeah, a kind of maybe abstract example I could propose just to clarify that I'm on the right track here with what this lesson is trying to get at is that maybe with the ego's desires, which are separate from the will of God, it might have a similar consequence or a similar result, but the intention of it is the difference between light and darkness. So for example, I really want to be wealthy and successful because all the parents I had and all the teachers told me I would be nothing, and I want to get revenge and I want to elevate my status on earth, versus God wants me to have abundance because that is my design. Even though it might have the same result, it's the light versus dark, right? Is that something? Okay.
Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
this is so synchronistic too, because I just watched The Count of Monte Cristo last night.
Oh, I've seen that recently as well. For the first
And
time I saw recently. It's a great
yes,
one.
there's a new one,
Mm.
2024. That's when that
I
movie was
didn't see
made. And then there's a 2002
I saw
version.
that one.
Yes,
Oh, I didn't know there
Guy
was a new one.
Guy
Oh.
Pearce. That's actually, I like that one better.
Mm.
This newer one is an adaptation. There are certain things I don't like about it, but not to digress from your point. Your
Mm-hmm.
basic point in the one I just saw, the recent one,
Mm-hmm.
2024, is that he's full of revenge. He wants to
Mm.
pay everybody back who made his
Mm-hmm.
life miserable by lying on him and putting him into hell.
Mm-hmm.
And in the one I just saw, um, hopefully this is okay, spoiler alerts and all that, but he has a chance to kill some people. And you can see that mentally he throws his weapons down mentally. He's like, I'm not going to kill them. And it's like what you just described. He's experienced both. He had power, he had wealth. It came to him somewhat miraculously. And he was able to maneuver and do all these amazing things to hold his enemies to account, the people who betrayed him. And in this newer version, he has also the opportunity to kill without hesitation, even young people. And you can see that he thinks better of it and he reaches a higher level. It's sort of like what you were saying. So, as somebody who likes revenge movies, and we'll talk about revenge movies on this podcast, it's got an interesting set of twists, this
Mm-hmm.
adaptation. So, any
Mm.
thoughts? Any from when you just saw it recently? Anything you wanted to add, or? Um,
Um, no, but now the way you just expressed this story reminds me of the story of David in the Bible, which I was just reading this morning, actually.
okay.
So he
What
had the
would you?
chance of killing Saul, and he who's trying to kill him, and he didn't
Yes.
kill him. He let him go many times. So yeah, that
Yes.
kind of similar story, kind of hero's journey, who is truly the hero when they decide not to use their heroism to the detriment of others. Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful example, illustration. Yeah, he would even plant his sword next to Saul's head
Mm-hmm.
when Saul was
Like I
sleeping.
could. I
Yeah.
could
He was
kill
like,
you.
I was here and I
Yeah.
could have put this through your head, but I
Hmm.
respect you. You're the king. You're my
Hmm.
mentor. And even though you're a bit
Hmm.
crazy right now, I'm
Hmm.
not going all the way. This is like,
Hmm.
oh my goodness, so many synchronicities for us.
Yeah. Hmm.
Unplanned. We did not
Hmm.
rehearse this. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Fabulous.
beautiful lesson. And I will there be light. And yeah, just really praying for that will to surrender if you don't have it, if it feels like a strenuous thing. So just really using what little will you might have to pray for the will to surrender, essentially.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. That's beautifully said. That's what this lesson is encouraging. It's like, don't make it a huge, big, impossible thing. Just a little bit of a pivot in the direction of the divine will. It'll sweep us up in the right direction. And so much will be answered and performed for us. And again, not to say life can't be difficult, because so many of us have major investments in nightmares of different kinds that we're holding on to. But, those are what make life difficult for us, I believe, ultimately. All right. So, in terms of application, I was thinking about a slightly new development for us over the last several podcast shows, where I like to pick a news topic or a bunch of topics and just say that the purpose of picking those topics is to bring them to atonement, which in the Course is the divine sort of touchstone for healing things and fixing things. It's like we're taking our will, and rather than getting upset or fearful or angry or overly controversial or overthinking something, we're just like, I see this thing, I'm matching it up or aligning it with God, and God will work miracles in and through it for the benefit of me and everybody else, right? So bringing stuff to atonement. So there are at least two that I wanted to do today. One is the stock market, excuse me, which has been plunging a lot the last couple of weeks. Like, you have 2 day back to back tumbles that amounted to over 1,000 points decline in the Dow, I guess it is. And this is not my area, and I'm not giving financial advice about anything, but it's just things have been tanking, and then uh, people are getting fired from their jobs, and then the reason the stock market is important against the firings is that a lot of people's 401ks are taking hits, right? That's where people have a lot of their retirement and stuff like that. So it's all kind of going backwards for certain types of people. I'm sure there's a lot of angst and panic and fear and anger and rage, regardless of what political side you're on, right? But it's just this decline in fortunes. So we're bringing that to atonement and asking for miracles and peace and power to permeate all of that. And then the other one is what I think is accurate to say, which is the increasing unpopularity of Tesla in Europe and Elon Musk in particular. Certain things that he seems to be doing that have made him a flashpoint for a lot of rage. And anyway, you could go on and on talking about it. My goal is not to stir up partisanship um, or controversy or ill will on either side of the divide. It's just to bring things to atonement. And then there's a lot of things one could say about Donald Trump as well. So this is just to make clear what the timestamp is for where we are. This is March 2025, right? So we're just bringing these things as leaders to atonement. And um, again, I have to be careful in how I say all of this, and not to exaggerate sort of my relevance or importance, but I have clients who are on the front lines of things. They are in the rooms with some of these people, or have been in the rooms, at a presidential level and different business level. And I will frequently say when I'm talking to them, it's not really about me and what I want, but can you give me what your freshest thinking is about this, since you're in the room and you have a front row seat? And it's me, I'm like eating leftovers warmed over 10 times by the time I get the story. It's like, so anyway, this is all part of why this is important to me, even though I recognize it's not always that important to other people. Anything you want to say before we go to the call to action to finish for today, Brittany?
Yeah, when you say to bring these things to atonement, what is the typical practice of doing that, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so there are a couple of them. And they, in some ways, one of them relates to this lesson, which has in it, I forget the exact place, and I won't take the time to try and find it, but the idea of going to an original state of perfection in which everybody is innocent, right? Without all the encasings and additional levels of what the ego brings. So even if it's somebody that we hate or somebody that we really love for particular benefits we get from them, regardless of all of that, there's a kind of more objective level in which we are using atonement as a kind of cleanser from all the overlays that make us either love people or hate people. And this is more neutral. It's like we're all perfect. Me, you, everybody else who's ever been on this earth plane, we're all originally perfect. And atonement brings us to that perfection. So it's really, in my conversation with people, I'll usually say, yeah, I hate this person, I hate that person, but that's in my ego. My job is to really see them as innocent. So political. So I'll say that when it comes up with the client or something like that, or I'll think it. So that's one thing. There's ho'oponopono for any situation that we see. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me and thank you. About my perceptions, longer prayers around that. And then the last one that I like a lot is lesson 78. So lesson 78 is where Jesus is giving us permission privately to make a list of all the things that we hate about the person we're aggrieved about. So I make log lists. I'm like, I might have 10, 15, 20 things about somebody, either in my personal life, friend, work situation, or at this more macro news level. I make the list of all the things I hate that are just bugging me and getting on my nerves. And then the second part is to give all those images over to God and look for that underlying innocence in them and us and so on. So any reactions to any of that, or any practices that you have that you're fond of in the course or outside of the course, anything that works for you?
Yeah, I find that practicing, I think we could summarize this as practicing radical forgiveness in a way. It's almost best to keep it privately nowadays because there's actually a lot of people who are triggered by that. If you go around defending someone who's perceived as evil or is perceived as problematic, defending by saying they're just a human, that level of defending. You're not allowed to say that about certain people anymore. Certainly, about some of the most evil people in history, you can't use that as an excuse to justify what they've done or what they are doing. So if you want to practice radical forgiveness, I think Kanye famously said something to that degree toward Hitler, actually. I don't remember. He said, I love everyone, including Hitler or something like that. Like, I love everybody. So you're not allowed to say that. So if you want to feel that, if you want to practice that level of radical forgiveness, I would suggest just doing it privately between you and God, because getting into the conversations about the nuances of it are not helpful. I don't think he's particularly wrong for viewing it from that angle, if that's genuinely what he was trying to say. Obviously, critics would say he was trying to trigger people. That would be another possibility. It's possible. But again, we should love everyone. So what can we say? And then on the other hand, in the human realm and in the nightmare realm, is it our duty to, defend ourselves from evil and stand up against injustice? Of course, that's not a bad way to spend your time on this earth either, if you believe you're doing the right thing. So they're not contrary to one another. And actually, back to the original point of this lesson, the light might be that you end up with the same result. You end up with, justice, whether you love them radically from afar or are confrontational, but the confrontational way creates these grievances that might have alternative side effects, I guess you could say. Think about people who protest and end up in jail. That's not a great way to go about it. That's not the miracle-minded outcome. So not that should ever happen, but those are my thoughts on this topic, I guess.
A lot of great nuances. Thank you for all of them. I mean, we could spend hours and hours
Yeah.
discussing the intricacies of these things, but there's one quick sidebar that you made me think of. I was scrolling through socials to see, it's kind of a guilty pleasure, but not so guilty. I like doing it. It's fun. You learn so much in so many different directions. And I saw, this was just this past week, I saw a protest cordon, a group of people blocking the road. And again, it's not funny, and I'm not laughing because I think it's funny, and I don't mean ill will to anybody. But there was somebody who's like, this was in Europe somewhere, I guess, and the person was like, my wife is in the hospital, and I'm urgently trying to get there to see her. You guys need to move out of the way so I can go. And they're like not hearing, and they're doing their protest. So he just runs right over them. he uses his car to run right over them. You know, he's like, I gave you fair warning. I'm in a hurry because I've got a family emergency. My wife is in the hospital. This is the only way I can go. And he just, you know, I think they were pulling them out of the way just in time-ish, kind of like, but dude was not playing around. To your point about all the different sort of nuances that can come into play. Who's right there? Who's wrong there? Who's being just? Who's suffering an injustice? Right? Well, what we do is we bring the whole enchilada to the atonement, and we say, okay, everybody at the highest metaphysical level, beyond the earth plane, everybody is innocent, and everybody's just like the most sophisticated Hollywood actors in a movie. You know, they're all amazing people, ideally beautiful people. They're just acting a role, you know, between the bully and the victim and so on. All right, we're going to go to, thank you for letting me, didn't even plan to share that anecdote. So we're going to the final call to action, which you're usually in charge of. You do a great job with it. I'll just tie in what we've been doing to say that on the personal level, it usually has to do with opening up to miracles in health, wealth, love, and enlightenment in one's own life, in order to become more effective as a leader. The more peace, the more abundance, the more grounded in our own lives we are, the better. And then on this more sort of macro level, where are all the ups and downs of the markets and the political spectrum? How are they affecting our roles as leaders, our businesses, our communities, and things like that? So over to you to wrap us up with the call to action before we finish finally.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to do that, and just kind of what we were saying before, with just really having that prayer for yourself, that you will there be light, you will that into existence. I think that's the takeaway application for this lesson. You can do that by just saying it out loud, thinking it when you wake up in the morning. If you're like me, sometimes you wake up and it's really cloudy because I'm in the Netherlands now and there's no light. So that's a good reminder to say, I will there be light in the world and in my heart also. So I think that could be the takeaway for this one.
Beautiful. Thank you, Brittany. Excellent. I love it. And we're also very grateful for everyone who comments on our podcast here, on the video part, if that's what you're watching, and of course on the blog and the audio version. Thank you for every single comment, every single vote of appreciation that you share with us. We love it. So Brittany, thank you for another great show. Loving it, and loving the teamwork and the miracle process we do together. It feels like such a blessing. So looking forward to seeing you next month, April 2025,
Yes.
for that month's show. Thanks, Brittany.
And thank you for the opportunity of being on this show. It would not be possible without, obviously, you facilitating this space. So I love it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Yes, and thank you to all of our listeners and our audience
Yes.
members. See you next month.
Yes,
Bye,
see
everybody.
you next month, everyone. Bye.
Yes, bye.